just me and Jesus. I got this. It's me and Jesus. And it's as if other people are not, they don't matter. Like you have the right to contain your story. Like you have the right to keep what Jesus did for you to yourself. As if someone else doesn't need that. But the cool part about Peter was the homies were on the boat with him. The disciples were on the boat with him. First of all, I love Peter because at least Peter had enough boldness to get off the boat, right? Like, he's like, okay, I'm scared. They were all scared, but they just stayed in their fear. Peter at least said, I'm afraid, so I need to know this is you, Jesus. I need you to do something. So he allowed, even in his fear, to have enough courage to challenge God to be God in his life.
Amen.
Like sometimes you get a little bold with God, like, God, I'm going out. I'm going out on this one. I need you to do something to show me it's you. And that's what Peter did. And they all benefited as a byproduct of Peter's courage. So Peter had enough courage to say, we all scared, but we can't stop that fear. We're all scared, but that appears to be a ghost. That is taking me out. That has me scared. Jesus, if it's you, I need to hear from you. I need you to call me unto yourself. Actually, make me walk on this water right here, the same water where the storms are going crazy. It's 3 a.m. in the morning. It is dark. It's not like it's the daylight out and you're like, there's Jesus. No. Peter is scared. But he had another motivation, like, but I know Jesus. And if it's really him, he's going to do something to reveal himself to me. Have you ever been in a situation like, this is crazy. I'm afraid. I'm going out. But there's a but. And that but is, but I know Jesus. And I know if it's Jesus, he's going to do something to reveal himself to me so I don't stay stuck in this. But he was bold enough to ask Jesus to show himself strong on his behalf. To do something crazy and mighty for him, right? So Peter gets out there, starts thinking, Jesus does what he does. He catches him. And we get to verse 33, and as a result of Jesus catching Peter, the disciples, in their timidness and their fear and their lack of courage, and they're probably thinking, Peter has lost his mind. He just stepped off the boat. You know, they're probably thinking, Peter going down. At least we're going down on the boat, and it's going to take a minute for this boat to go down. Peter about to go down. But so they're like these bystanders, and they're watching Peter activate his faith.
Amen.
And as an activation of Peter's faith, they get blessed. As an activation of Peter's faith, they see the manifested power and presence and glory of God. Amen. And they fall to their face and they worship God. And I thought, is that our lives? Is that the life God's called us to live? That our lives become about knowing God, our own experience, and making him known. Allowing our lives to be the vehicle through which the presence and power of God is manifested for somebody else. So they can see that and come into an intimate fellowship and knowing of Christ, like we have. The gospel is not centered around Christians. It is centered around Christ. It's not about religion. It's about coming into the intimate, powerful, life-transforming relationship with the person of Jesus Christ. I said, I argue this is what sets Christianity apart from many other religions. It is that not about our power, our good deeds, our righteous works, but the power and presence of a living God fueling us by his Spirit to move powerfully among the earth. I say it like this, Paul declares of himself. So it's the story of Peter, but one of my favorite examples of that is the Apostle Paul. Because Paul was jacked up. I mean, Paul did some crazy stuff. I mean, Paul persecuted the church. Paul killed Christians and came up on the scene like, yeah, I love Jesus too. They were like, whoa, you was killing us, right? Like, you don't get to just step up in our territory and talk about you want to join the crew. You was out there murdering the crew. But Paul encountered Jesus, and none of them had to say matter, because Paul had his own intimate, life-transforming experience with Jesus. And he said, I've come to know God on this road called Damascus. And so for the rest of my life, because Jesus met me on a road, Jesus intervened on a journey to destruction, and he met me, and he changed my life at Damascus, I will commit the rest of my life to making him known. That was the declaration of Paul's life. And he said, I'm an apostle to the Gentiles. I will spend the rest of my life preaching the gospel where he has never been preached. From one encounter on a road called Damascus. I'm talking about Paul, the murderer. And not just a murderer, he murdered Christians. And he was like, I'm riding for Jesus. That makes no sense outside of the kingdom. Outside of the kingdom, because to me the kingdom, makes no sense. Like, I often say, like, the ways of the kingdom are completely upside down. If you want to know the way of the kingdom, think something and then it's the opposite of that. Like, that's the kingdom. That's typically, whatever comes naturally to me, most times I say, so God's way is opposite of this. You made me mad, I want to cuss you out, God says love. Show me that, Jesus, because I'm struggling, right? It's like the ways of the kingdom are so upside down that sometimes it frustrates me because my natural inclinations are to do what I want to do. Right? So the Christians, they had every right to be like, Paul, we heard about you. You was taking us out left and right. I mean, the homie Stephen was stoned to death and you stood there and watched. And you want to come kick it with us? But Paul was so convinced. He was so determined. He was so caught up in the reality of what Christ did for him that it didn't matter if people understood or not. Okay. It didn't matter if they came in alignment with the mission that God had for Paul's life. It didn't matter to him. He was like, I've come into an intimate knowledge and experience with Jesus. Therefore, for the rest of my life, I will work for people to come into an intimate knowledge and experience of Jesus Christ. Paul says, for I am the least of the apostles. He was clear. I am the least of them. I killed y'all. I am clear. I am the least of the apostles. I am not worthy to even be called an apostle. Because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace towards me was not in vain. Paul said Jesus did something for me, and what he did for me was not in vain.
Amen.
How many of us have experienced something from God, but then it was as if it was in vain? As if the effect that Christ had on our lives was not enough to make him known to other people. Paul says, I was jacked up, but Jesus met me in a space. And when he did it, I tell you, it was not in vain. He said, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace towards me was not in vain. But I labor more abundantly than they all. Yet not I. Let's be clear. Because we can get caught up in what we do. We can be caught up in our abilities. We can be caught up in our giftedness. God gave me the gift of. Who cares if it's not about God? Right? Like we can get all caught up in what God has given us to do that we make it about us. So Paul was on his little tangent. I was the least of the apostles. Now God's made me an apostle. And now it's not in vain. He's like, whoa. But not I. He said, I labor more abundantly. So he was getting caught up in what he did. Then they all, yet not I, but the grace of God which was with me. Therefore, whether it was I or they or we preach the gospel. He said, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters if I don't preach the gospel. And I'm clear that my ability to preach the gospel and to make God known is a direct reflection of what God did in me. What God did for me. Yeah. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, it is not about me. He said to me, my grace. So Paul had an issue, right? And I'm not going to get into the issue, but Paul had an issue. And he was like, yo, God, I need you to take this away. It doesn't tell us what the issue is. The Bible calls it his thorn. Some people say it's a sin. Some people say it's a struggle. It's some other things. The point is Paul had something in his life that he wanted God to remove that he identified as a weakness, right? And he said to me, this is God talking to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I would, this is crazy to me. Paul said, instead of being strong, I would actually rather boast in my weakness. I would rather boast in my infirmities that the power of Christ may rest upon me. He said, I would rather carry a weakness so that I can boast in it so that God's glory would be made manifest through me circumstance. He said, I'd rather make you known, Jesus, than to be strong, independent of your power. I'd rather have this infirmity. I'd rather have this weakness. I'd rather have this thorn in my side. I'd rather be weak. Amen. So that someone can look upon my life and say that it is by the power of Christ that I am made strong. It is much better to have the weakness and allow Christ manifested, resurrected glory and power be made manifest through you than to walk independent and strong. Strong, right? Because that's when you start living in the kingdom and you start realizing it's not about me. That like in Matthew 14:33, so people can look upon Paul's life, look upon Peter's life, look upon our lives and bow and worship God. How many of us can say that we've submitted our lives to that degree? I'm going to say daily, it's a minute by minute, second by second process for me. Because who's like, when I wake up this morning, Jesus, I'd like to be weak today. I would like your power to be manifest so someone can get to know you, so keep my weakness. No. We're like, take it out. Take it out. Sometimes Jesus like, can this cup pass? Can it pass? Jesus, let the cup pass. Something else. But then when you look at your thing, you look at your infirmity, you look at your weakness, you look at your circumstance, you're like, wow. This is an opportunity for the power of God to rise up in me to such a degree that I can boast in my weakness. And someone can look at my life and say, I'm going to fall on face and worship God, because whoever is doing that for Liana, whoever's doing that for Paul, whoever's doing that for Peter, I need that. I need that. Whatever that is, that power, that strength, that deliverance, that healing, that victory, that perspective, that mentality, that overcoming spirit, I need that. But how can they witness that if we're not going through? If we're not experiencing the power of Christ in our own lives? I mean, don't get me wrong, it does not feel good at all. I have to crucify my flesh secondly. No, not daily. Sometimes I don't make it through the morning. I don't make it out the bed. I can easily complain about my issues. And God is like, crucify that. You know, it's like, give that over to me, because my power is worth so much more than your own abilities to rise up and live life as some self-righteous person. Like, you did it. He's like, let me make it clear, the gospel is about me. You were falling, I caught you, that's the story. That's the story. But sometimes we were like, oh, my spirit was so yielded to Christ. You know, like, I'm so amazing. I mean, we don't say I'm so amazing, but that's how we tell the story. Like, I was so yielded to God, and he met me in that space. And I'm not saying that's not so, but let's be clear. It's not like the journey is God, and then Liana, and then here we go. No, it's like God and a little bit of Liana, and here we go. The story is not about me, God, halfway. No, it's like 95% God, and if I'm smart, 5% Liana. And that 5% is really just yielding and allowing his power to just do crazy things, because that's what his power can do. I don't even know where I am on my notes. Corinthians 12:9. So Paul says, he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, don't quote it if you don't mean it. Therefore, most gladly, I would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. 1 Corinthians 1:26 through 27. God's power in us. For you see your calling, brother. And some of you guys can relate to this. I surely can. Not many were wise according to the flesh. Not many mighty. Not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of this world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of this world to put to shame the things that are mighty. And the base things of the world and the things that are despised, God has chosen. And the things which we are not, to bring to nothing the things that are. Let's be clear, God will humble you.